O tēnā koe, kia ora koutou katoa, ko Quentin Campbell toka wingua, he hononga o te raki Northern Regional Alliance, ACE RMO, he mahi ahau. Nau mai, haere mai, and welcome to today's webinar event at Tamaki Makaurau. We've got DHB and RMO representatives from our three DHBs, which are counties Manukau to the south, Auckland DHB Central, and to the north over the Harbour Bridge, we've got Waitemata as well. So at this stage, welcome you all along, and I'll just hand over to our team to just introduce yourselves, and we will run along with our webinar. Thank you.
Hi, welcome for attending, everyone. So I'll just introduce myself first. My name is Melody, and I am one of the recruitment and allocations consultants. So I'll be looking after the health officer portfolio along with Korero. And over here we have Naomi. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Naomi. I'm a current PGY2 at Waitemata DHB at Waitakere.
Hi everyone, my name's Coral. I'm the recruitment and allocation consultant for health officers. I'm based here up in Northern Regional Alliance, Auckland. We also have another PGY2 that's zooming in with us today, Josh.
Hello, my name's Josh. I'm a PGY2 at Counties Manukau. Yeah, stoked to be here.
My name is Alana. I am currently a PGY2 house officer working at the Waitemata DHB, and I'm currently on a general medicine run. I guess Auckland is, of course, one of the biggest cities in New Zealand. It's really vibrant here. There's so much to do. It's such a big city as well. There's so many places that you can visit. It's got a great sort of cafe culture as well. There's so many things that you can do with your friends and your family over the weekends. And yeah, it's just so diverse in terms of different cultures. And there's always different things like festivals and cultural performances, and you get to learn a lot about, you know, different ethnicities as well. And it's just one big great city, and I love it here. I think Auckland's a great choice, especially when you're starting out as a new graduate. It's special in the sense that it's got 4 different hospitals that you can work in. You know, in the Waitemata DHB, you've got Waitakere Hospital and North Shore Hospital. You've got the Auckland Hospital, and then the counties Manukau region as well. And each hospital, I think, has something different to offer, and you can get so much experience in each different hospital. And you know, the advantage also is you've got Auckland Hospital with so many subspecialties, and you get to be exposed to that and get so much more experience in teaching from there as well, which is, I think, the biggest advantage in terms of working in Auckland. I guess it is also one of the reasons why it's the most popular choice as well. Sometimes it's just great for training. Be prepared for traffic. It's got to be one big thing as well. But I mean, Auckland is such a well-supported place. You know, when you come, there will be people that you can turn to in terms of getting advice about, you know, how to kickstart, you know, whatever training program you have. If there's any specialties or programs that you are interested in, there's always someone that you can talk to. We've also got great medical education fellows. Yeah, there's you can get support from so many different people. That was something I didn't really know initially, but when I came up to Auckland, you know, I found out, oh gosh, there's so much support that you can find from so many places that you never really knew. So I think if you do move to Auckland, there will be definitely a lot of support available for you. Oh gosh, proudest moment or achievement. To be honest, probably finishing medical school. That's got to be my proudest moment, you know, after studying for so long and you finally get that piece of paper and you start working. Yeah, that graduating was definitely my proudest moment.
Hello, back to us again. So now that you've all heard from Alana, I'd just like to ask our two guest RMOs to talk about their personal reasons for choosing to work in the Auckland region. We currently have one of our PGY2s who is zooming in with us today. So Josh, could you please let us know why you chose to work in Auckland, or if there were any specific things that drew you here?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I did most of my placements in rural hospitals, so I actually spent all of my time out of Auckland. And my reason for coming was one, the diversity that you have at Middlemore Hospital, shameless plug for my place. And then two was just the significant exposure to all the different hospital specialties, which quite frankly, I didn't see in all the places that I was at. And in coming here, I've definitely seen a much wider breadth of cases, and it's highly rewarding to learn something new, but also highly rewarding to be exposed and be a part of people's journeys when you get to do that. Yeah, so that was my main pull. The other stuff is like everything happens in Auckland. Like New Zealand's a small place, and aside from the traffic, which I actually just take the train. I live on a train line, so I don't have to worry about traffic whatsoever. I just hop off the train and walk 5 minutes to my house. So that's the way around that. Yeah, hand it over to Naomi on the other side.
Yeah, I'll try and touch on things that the other two haven't. I guess I actually grew up in Germany, so I'm very much a big city girl. So I love Auckland. I love the kind of just the diversity in terms of even just within Auckland where you can live. I think if you're someone who comes from a smaller city, there's definitely like areas within Auckland that's so big that'll still make you feel like you're not that far away from home, to be honest. I live about 8 minutes away from one of the West Coast beaches, and we surf like 4 days a week, and it's awesome. I think in terms of traffic, you can be really selective about where you live. You can either do what Josh does, which is live on the train line, which gets you both to Auckland for the Grafton stop, or counties. But there's definitely lots of doctors that live in the kind of areas around the hospitals that make it really accessible, and actually don't have to spend as much time in traffic. And in terms of the hospital, I spent most of my time at Auckland DHB, and I did so because, it's just got so many subspecialties. I think if you are uncertain in terms of what you want to do in terms of specialisation, even if you're thinking about ED or rural medicine, being up in Auckland helps you get a really good understanding of referrals and who we see, all the different specialties, and you just get to put your hand up for a few more things, I think, possibly than if you're in a smaller centre. So for me, I've had a really positive first year as a health officer and couldn't recommend it anymore, to be honest.
We're obviously really glad to hear that. As you can all tell, there's just so much that Auckland has to offer. We have a lot of different key attractions, activities. As we said, there's just a lot for us to offer in terms of training opportunities and things like that. What we're going to do now is we're going to take you through the next steps, and I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Melody.
Cool, thanks, Korero, and thanks, Naomi and Josh, for imparting some of the reasons why you decided to choose our lovely city here. And yeah, so now let's look at the recruitment process and how you two can join us here in Auckland. So for the recruitment process, as long as you have ranked at least one of the 3 DHBs in the Auckland region and have, of course, completed your application, then we will receive your application from ACE on the 20th of July. So basically, I know it's a common misconception that you have to rank all 3 DHBs in the Auckland region to be offered, but that's not true. You just need to rank, where you prefer to work at in order of your preference. And also, we do not know exactly where you have ranked each DHB, only that you have ranked one of the 3 DHBs in the Auckland region. And for us here, we don't actually have interviews, which is quite different from, I know, some of the other smaller DHBs. And the reason for that is purely because we do have quite a lot of applicants, being the largest city here in New Zealand. So I think last year, for example, we had about almost 400 applicants for each DHB. And of course, that's just quite a difficult number to get through if we were to interview everyone. So of course, we would love to know each and every one of you and get the chance to talk to you, but sometimes that's just not possible, unfortunately. But what we do have instead is a ranking process. So basically, the final ranking takes into account 50% of your ACE score and 50% of the PVTC score. And this PVTC ranking is based on the fit for purpose practitioner model, which my colleague Korero will talk about later. And this ranking is done by a representative subgroup of PVTC members. So they are our pre-vocational training committee, and intern supervisors as well as health officers will also take part in this ranking process. So how we rank is, so we look at the fit for purpose practitioner model, and there's basically 4 quadrants. So it's divided into clinical performance, team approach, personal development, and professionalism. And for each of these quadrants, you have a score of -1 to 3, with 3 being the best. And in order to be ranked for a position, you will need to achieve at least a 1 for each of the quadrants. So for example, if you had gotten a -1 in one quadrant, but a 3 for the remaining 3 quadrants, then we will not rank you for a position, as the requirements is at least a 1 in each category. And how we basically rank you is through what you have provided in your application. So things like your CV, academic transcript, references, and cover letters, etc., which is optional. And so now I'll pass it over to Korero, who will take us more in depth about this whole process.
Well, lucky you guys, but for purpose practitioner model, I'm sure that's all what you want to hear about. It is something that is very important, though, as mentioned by Melody. This is something that we use to help rank you guys. As you can see on the screen, this is the model that our PVTC use to help rank your application. If you'd like your own copy of this, you can go onto our Auckland Doctors website and download it as part of our selection and allocation policy, just so that you have a copy for your own reference. Basically, this model will be used to score every applicant that applies through to us, and is broken, as Melody said, into 4 separate quadrants. Our PVTC will score you based on information they receive in the application. For our clinical performance quadrant, our team, so our PVTC and that sort of thing, they will be looking mainly at your references. For team approach, the team will also be looking at your references. For personal development, the team will be looking at your CV and your personal statement. If you choose to include a cover letter, they will also be looking at that for your personal development. And for professional, the team will be scoring you based on what's in your CV and references. It's very important that as part of your application, you give us a good sense of who you are as a person, your life experiences, and why you'll make a good house officer. If you've done anything that's extracurricular, we really want to know about it. If you've worked a part-time job, if you did tutoring, volunteer work, or have hobbies, we want to know about those too. The more information you can provide us to help us get a better sense of who you are, the better. It's essentially your chance to be able to sell yourselves to us.
Coming to Auckland was the best decision ever, really. I mean, I think it grew me in a lot of other ways as well, made me more independent really quickly, and just the quality of the teaching at Auckland is fantastic.
With general paediatrics training, I think to become a good paediatrician you really need to get a good wide breadth of experience within different specialties, including all the subspecialties, general paediatrics and intensive care, and I think that's a huge opportunity that you can't get anywhere else being in Auckland.
The training I've had at Auckland Hospital has really set me up for my future career in medicine regardless of what I choose. I've been able to rotate through some really good specialties in each one. I've learned a lot.
Get a lot of interesting infectious diseases out here and things like Kawasaki disease and rheumatic fever.
You don't come across one day that's the same as the next. So often we'll be doing a ward round if we're on gynecology and then
do some time in theatre and then
talking to patients, making them feel like they've been heard and listened to.
So you're getting taught from the best at the best, and on a daily basis. You're not far away from a consultant who can answer your question as a house officer.
We can do almost everything here, transplant, all kind of surgeries, and I think that is one of the perfect places to work, live, and even learn everything.
One of the reasons that I came up to Auckland was it's a bigger city, there's lots more to do. You get some fantastic visiting shows, artists from all over the world coming here. It really stands up on an international stage.
Outside of work, I'd say my time is dominated by some paddleboarding, mountain biking if the surf's not up in the morning. So there's lots of things to see and do, lots of weekend away in Auckland or in and around Auckland.
I mean, speaking for myself for the last few months, there's just so much that you don't see in other places that professionally and medically is, I think, pretty hard to beat, probably in New Zealand and probably lots of other places in the world as well.
Hi again, everyone. It's Coral. Just bringing you guys back. I know that you guys would really want to hear a little bit more from our two RMOs that we have here today for you guys. I might go to Naomi first this time, who's here on my left. First question we have for you, Naomi, what is it like to work at the hospitals in Auckland? And then second part, what advice would you give to new PGY1s?
Okay, so I guess firstly I just want to say congrats for making it this far, and I just feel really excited for you guys that you're getting this close to actually being able to apply for your job and start as a doctor. So I guess that's the first thing I want to say. In terms of working, I mean, you guys have all, your TIs now, you probably have a fair idea in terms of what the routines are. First thing in the morning, the house officers will prep the lists and kind of get things ready for the ward round. So that's pretty much the same no matter what specialty you're in. Surgical specialties, you obviously start a little bit earlier than the medical ones. And that's just, it's not masochistic, it's just because the theatres have to start at a certain time. I've mainly worked at Auckland DHB. I did all of my PGY1 there, and then my first quarter of PGY2 as a surgical relief house officer. I have just had such a good year at Auckland. Josh will be able to tell you about counties, which I hear is also great. But I'm probably quite impartial to Auckland. I think I tried to make as much use of kind of the subspecs as possible. So, in vascular, I think one of the kind of myths is that you're just a paperwork monkey at Auckland, and I think that's really, really untrue. I guess I was trying to think about like what my vascular run, which was my first run of the year. By the end of my 3 months, I was doing almost half an amputation with the fellow under vascular, and you just get good at doing your paperwork and good at doing your admin, and you pick your days. So it can be actually really awesome and really exciting. I think Auckland Hospital is known as a big hospital. Some people talk about being a little bit lost in the system. I think every team is small enough that you get to know your registrars and your consultants really well. I've found most consultants on the whole absolutely approachable, and most of them are super keen to teach. Auckland's a teaching hospital, so it's just part of the expectation. They actually love doing what they do. If you're engaged, if you're interested, they will always make time for you, and they'll always find ways to kind of help you develop in the areas that you're saying that you want to develop in. Enjoy it. Enjoy like your last year as a TI, or your last few months of a TI. You're about to start on a really cool job that you've worked incredibly hard for. You're all obviously very capable, and as a PWGY2, I really look forward to having you guys in hospitals with us. I think my biggest advice in terms of having a really solid start as a PGY1 is to make use of being your TI at the moment. I know it's tempting to sometimes leave early because there's the last time you're a student, you don't have responsibility. I think you put yourself in a really good position if you stay for your days, you do the long days, you do some walk calls, because when you are on in that first couple of weeks and you have to do a walk call by yourself, I just, there is nothing worse than feeling really terrified. And I think you can kind of manage that by just putting yourself in that position of being as close to a house office as you can now. And just enjoy it. You're going to be surrounded by your peers that you've done these 6 years with, and it's awesome. It's really awesome.
Thanks, Naomi. That's like a lot to take in. It's really nice. Well, we're going to hand it over to you, Josh, on Zoom now. I'm just going to ask you the same questions. So the first one is, what is it like to work at the hospitals in the Auckland region? And do you have any advice that you would give to new PGY1s?
Kia ora again. There's lots of reasons to come to Middlemore. People know that it's busy, and I'm not going to lie to you, it is. There's a steep learning curve at the start, but it's also highly rewarding. You get a significant amount of exposure, like I said, but you also learn, there's lots of subspecialties here as well. And I've done two of the subspecialties, respiratory and gastro, and I'll be doing cardio as well. And you can actually, the amount of effort you put in, you'll get more out of those runs. So like, for example, doing gastro, I can do acidic drains and stuff like that. Or when I'm on cardio, I can do some of the ETT clinics. Being surrounded by these subspecialties, you know which way to refer, or like how much information other people want. And for me, vocationally, I want to be a rural hospital GP doctor. So actually coming here has been quite a significant advantage for me to figure out how people will manage these things in the community, or which things I need to refer and which things I now know are unsafe and need to come into hospital. So that's really important. It's a really supportive environment. Everybody is nice at Middlemore, and I can't say that I felt the same sense of like home that I have felt at this DHB. Everybody is nice. The nursing staff is kind, the caregivers are kind, the SMOs are amazing, and they're really down to earth. There's no sense of hierarchy that I felt in between some of my bosses, and everyone in between that. And that's something I really love about the place. The RMO unit's good. I used to have a bad reputation at some point, and that was almost the reason I didn't come here. But they're quite understanding and compassionate, really good at negotiating, but you need to just think about your leave in advance. It's really hard to just ask for leave for the next week, which is what a lot of people do. But if you are not worried about a week that you want to have time off, just say that and negotiate that, because there are spaces to have leave, and it's they're really kind, and it's really easy to work through it with the RMO unit here, which is a part of the reason I ended up actually even staying here for even longer and swapping some of my runs to be back at Middlemore. The RMO lounge kind of sucks, but they have a feedback form and they do read them. I stayed for a night shift once and I saw them noting down some of the notes. Most of it's jokes, but I didn't realize it was being read. The food is good as well. The cafe's had a big revamp, which I'm pretty stoked about, and the food's had a good boost in quality, which I love. But I think the main thing is just the sense of like home that you have in the hospital, and I kind of enjoy being around the people here, and I don't dread coming to work, even though it's busy at the start and you can have really busy days. It's all kind of worth it when the people that you work with are just really nice to work with. My advice for people coming in is exactly what Naomi said. Really take the most of your TI year, especially near the end, because you are going to be stuck with a lot of stuff. especially when you're in a night shift. The good thing about being at a big hospital though, is that there's so many layers of support. You've got yourself, then you've got a ward backup house officer, and you've got a UMR, so a registrar just on call. If something goes wrong, there's an ICU registrar, and then a PAR team of 2 to 3 nurses just show up randomly where you are, and you can problem solve things pretty quickly. So the support is, I would say, even more than the support that you'd be getting in a rural area. It's a steep learning curve, so practicing some organizational skills will probably benefit you a lot, and preempting how an admission comes in and goes, or just watching that while you're on your TI placement, watching what happens and seeing if you can speed some things along. When you end up being a house officer, will get you out on time. And if you can't type, take a course, because yeah, it's an admin heavy job, but you do get to do lots of stuff if you get that stuff out of the way, and it's totally possible. Done heaps of procedures, and I'm pretty stoked with the time that I've had here, even though I'll be moving into GP life at some point. Yeah.
Thanks, Josh. That's a lot of good feedback that we've received from the both of you. Thank you for helping us out with that, just shedding some light, I guess, on like the ins and outs of what's going on in the hospital, some of the training opportunities and exposure that you guys have had. We're coming to the end of our presentation now, and we just wanted to open it up to you guys that are watching, just to see if there's any questions that have come through. If there are, you can type them down below. We will go through these and then try and answer as many as we possibly can. If we don't have the answers immediately, it's something we can go back, look into, and then come back to you guys at a later date. All of our team here, you can find our details on Auckland Doctors website. More than welcome for you guys to call through, email.
Thanks, Coral. One question I just wanted to try and front foot is we get a lot of emails from the applicants with regards to cover letters and who they should address the cover letters to. So given that any applicant can essentially apply to each of the 3 DHBs as part of their employer preferences, who should they write their cover letter address to?
So for that, we're happy for you to just write Dear Hiring Manager. But I guess if you do want to put a name, either Coral or my name will be fine, since we will be looking through the cover letters and yeah, doing the ranking based on that. So yeah, completely up to you. Dear Hiring Manager, that's perfectly fine as well.
PVTC committee is also another good one if you want, because it's going to be a mixture of the PVTC that are looking and ranking your application. So it's really up to you guys, but yeah, pretty formal.
Cool. Okay, so the next question we have is, as a PGY 1 and 2, do you rotate through the 3 DHBs or do you just stay in one?
Good question. So PGY 1s, you generally stay in the same DHB throughout your entire PGY 1. The reason for this is when you first come in as a PGY 1, you are assigned an educational supervisor. So this is a little bit different to your day-to-day clinical supervisor. Your educational supervisor kind of oversees your progress throughout your 4 quarters. So it kind of provides a little bit of stability and consistency for you if we keep you in the same DHB as your educational supervisor. PGY 2, you are able to shift around and rotate to different DHBs.
Cool. Okay, we've got a few questions coming in. So the next one is, does the Auckland region accept late starts, for example, by a quarter? And if so, does it affect your ranking or you being offered a role? So we do accept late starts in the Auckland region, and that generally won't affect your ranking. So when you go through your ACE application, if you just indicate you're a late start, you'll be ranked alongside everyone else. And then, you know, if you're matched to the Auckland region, then we'll be in contact with you just to confirm that start date. So yeah, late starts are acceptable. Generally by a quarter would be the norm, but if you had specific reasons and you wanted something longer than a quarter, that could be considered on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so the next question is, can you speak a bit about rostering and pay scales?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And for us, just because there's 3 different DHBs, it does vary a bit. So I can start off with maybe Waitemata District Health Board first. So in terms of pay scales, for medical runs, it's about B, C, or D in the mecha run category. So yeah, I guess it ranges, the salary ranges from about 72K to about 91K per annum. And for surgical runs, that's most are a B run category. And then for counties, for example, medical runs usually B or C mecha run category, with surgical runs also on a B or a C. And then for ADHB, so medical runs are about a C or a D on the mecha scale, and surgical runs, it can range between A to C.
I just wondered, do our 2 RMOs, Naomi or Josh, want to comment on the rosters from your experience and how busy or quiet or how many hours and stuff there are?
Yep. So I mean, it also varies a little bit on which union you're with, as in terms of how many days in a row you'll do. So I'm part of Stone, so I can do up to 12 days. The frequency of that as a house offer is very low. I haven't done many 12-day stretches. Surgical runs tend to be busier. It's just the nature of the job. It's the fact that you have to round earlier because you have to start theatre, and then you have to round on patients afterwards. Whether you're medical or surgical runs are still really good to do. In terms of, I think maybe Auckland, Middlemore, a little bit busier on the surgical perspective than the North Shore Hospital. I haven't spent a lot of time in North Shore outside of being a TI, so I couldn't speak to that too much, but I think those 2 are probably a little bit busier. But your run categories are reviewed fairly regularly with the unions and the, I think, RMO office. And so as things kind of become busier or quieter, or they change the number of houses and things on teams, that kind of gets reflected as much as possible in the run category. If there is concern that you're doing lots of extra hours, you can initiate or ask for a run review, and it just means it's a number of you just kind of need to, put it out, I think, to a union and to the hospitals to say, look, we feel like we're doing more hours, we'd like to do a run review. You pretty much just document what your hours actually are, and then they look at that. So yeah, generally I think I've had very, for the most part, I'd say we'll pretty much get paid for what we do. Yeah.
Any comments from you, Josh, on that?
Yeah, totally. I just want to put it into some real terms. So like category E, for example, is just slightly, like maybe a couple of dollars to $50 above what you get for the TI grant after tax and student loan plus KiwiSaver. I think my KiwiSaver is 10%, but it's like almost bang on what you get for the TI grant. When I first started general surgery, it was a category D. So I guess every category is almost like $200 more than the one prior to that. General medicine is a category B. Obviously that's different for Stones. I would say if you're going to do medicine at Middlemore, you might cry with the amount of work you'd have to do on a Stones Mecca. I think it's very different. The rostering styles must be from Middlemore to Auckland, but the 12 days in a row on a medicine run is pretty exhausting. And I've had a lot of my friends say they regret doing that. So that's something to think about. I think the general surgery runs are actually kind of okay now. So at Middlemore, they have 2 house officers and a float. They're still pretty bad when they have a bad day, but a lot of the time it's kind of manageable. Having done that myself, having an offsider and having a float come and join you, and the other floats sometimes come to join your team if you're super busy. So that kind of works out in your favor under surgery. The same goes for ortho as well. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's what it is money wise. RDOs get split randomly in the rosters. So some days you might work 10 days in a row and then have your 4 RDOs, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some days you might work 7 days and have a Monday, Tuesday RDO. Some days you might end up having prophylactic RDOs, what I consider the worst kind, where you have 2 days off before you do your 10-day stretch. So yeah, it's kind of variable. I think me currently category B on gastro and being a year above. I think I was making, when I first started under respiratory, which is the same category, was $1,800 a week. And of course your RDOs are deducted. So if you've got RDO days in that time, it's minus like $100 and something, which is kind of worth it in my opinion.
Cool, thanks Josh. All right, so next question. How many spots were available last year for each of the 3 DHBs in Auckland?
So for that, I don't have the exact numbers. I think it was about 62 to I think max 64 at one of the DHBs. I can't remember which one was which, but yeah, around 63 odd.
Yeah, in terms of actual positions available, it's around 62, 63 at each DHB. And I think the next question that someone's asked has the number of spots at each of the DHBs been confirmed for the 2022 intake. So I know nationally they're in the process of confirming those. For the Auckland region, they're going to be largely similar as previous, or as the current year. So it'll be about 63 at each of the DHBs, give or take a couple. Okay, so there's a couple of questions now coming up about cover letters. So the first one is, do we write one cover letter for all 3 DHBs, or do we write one for each DHB and address it specifically to that DHB?
So for this one, I mean, it's pretty much up to you as to whether you would like a generic cover letter for all of them or specifically one for each. I mean, for us from a ranking perspective, it would be great if it was one for each, just so we can get more information from you. So we can do the ranking, make sure you are the right fit for us and that we are the right fit for you.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of advice would be, if you're ranking all 3, don't do the same cover letter which says, I really want to work at Auckland, it's my first preference. I really want to work at Middlemore, it's my first preference. And I really want to work at Waitemata, it's my first preference. Because we do the ranking all on the same day. So the SMOs will see that. So just be honest in your cover letters, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, so there was about 3 questions on cover letters. So hopefully that's been covered. So yes, we will see all 3 cover letters. Okay, so next one is, what kind of support is available for health issues, especially those that may crop up suddenly or are chronic or intermittent? So as with all employees at the DHBs, there's good structures in place for health issues and quite robust policies around that, and occupational health departments at each DHB. So if something happens while you were employed, there's good process around that. The first point of call if you were having an issue would be to go to your RMO unit or to your educational supervisor, who you generally develop quite a good relationship with, and things are treated quite confidentially and on a case-by-case basis, and support plans are put in place which suit you. We do occasionally have RMOs who, between the point they rank a DHB or put in their ACE application to the point that they're due to start, incur some sort of health issue or something happens, as is life, and we also deal with those on a case-by-case basis. So if you get matched to a DHB and something happens, don't panic, just get in contact with us and we can have a conversation about that and work out whether you can start work, are there special circumstances around that, or do you need a late start. So we're generally pretty flexible, and we treat it confidentially, but we discuss it with the directors of clinical training at the relevant DHB and make sure we've got an appropriate plan. So the key message is, if you're having any concerns or issues, make sure you just flag them to us. Okay, what length is appropriate for a cover letter, i.e. how long is too long?
Wow, that's a pretty good question. I guess it's pretty subjective, but I mean, personally for us, I guess generally cover letters, which I've seen, is about 1 page to about maybe 2 pages max, just because it does get maybe a bit too much information if it was multiple pages long. And I think it's good to kind of sell yourself in a way which we can see immediately, because sometimes it can be quite difficult to sift through multiple pages to get at the information. So I reckon maybe 2 pages max.
I'll cut in there, and I'd say that an excellent cover letter can be written in about 3/4 of a page to a page max, just due to the high volume of cover letters that you'll be receiving at Auckland DHB as well. I think students should be able to quite succinctly write out their personal summary, why they wish to work there, and what strengths that they can offer to that DHB within a page as well. So perhaps just to save you guys a lot of reading, 2 pages as a cover letter is quite a lot. I think 1 page for you guys would be quite manageable.
Okay, I think this might be one for Josh and Naomi. So can you speak to any staff benefits at counties and Auckland, please?
So free lunch, there is such a thing as a free lunch. So you want specifically Auckland DHB. I mean, Auckland DHB doesn't have free coffee, White and Matter does. That's not the question, but that's the answer. There are, I mean, I think all hospitals in Auckland have incredible teaching, especially the PGY1. It's pretty much weekly teaching, and you know, unless your ward is exceptionally busy and there's patient factors, you generally have protected teaching time every week. There are some discounts for places around like gyms and some local food places and things like that. You can get discounts if you're ADHB staff members. There's another bunch of people like Noel Lemmings and Lululemon and things like that you get discounts for being like a Auckland District Health Board, where that's one of the 3 members.
Yeah, I'd say everyone gets work perks for working at any DHB. So even as a student, I think I used my DHB ID card that they gave me to get cost price plus GST on everything in Northern that I bought. I will say that at Middlemore, they're very generous with the amount of food that you can eat. Interpret that how you want. The teaching's good too, and they've got some pretty good educational supervisors. CMDHB has a lot of support for Pacific Island and Māori doctors, with 2 different associations that work for, you know, helping with some educational stuff, running some tutorials and sometimes doing simulations. So if you're keen for that and getting to know a lot of Māori doctors and Pacific Island doctors, a lot of them come to Middlemore for that. So that's a big perk if you were thinking about coming here.
Okay, so the next question, someone said it's been recommended to them to visit RMO offices and hospitals by some previous med students. Considering there's so many applicants that the region's not doing interviews, would this still be recommended?
I think that's completely up to you as an intern here. A lot of the requests that we are getting from interns to visit these hospitals is just so that you can get a sense of what it would be like in the environment. And I guess just a chance for you to meet like the RMO units, the education units, and all those sorts of things. I guess just to see what kind of environment you'll be putting yourself into if you do choose to work here and you do end up being successful. So I think that's probably a personal thing for you.
But there's like heaps of people looking at these CVs and stuff. Some of them you might not even meet ever. So like, you know.
Yeah, it won't impact your ranking or your scoring process. You're welcome to always stop into one of the Auckland RMO units. Depending if the team's got time, they could always take you on a tour or something, but you know, there are a lot of you, so that's not always possible. But yeah, Josh is right, it won't impact your ranking or it won't transfer through to that process. So don't feel like you have to put your face out there. Okay, next question. If it is your consultant's first time doing an ACE reference and you get some not observed, would you lose your point or opportunity to work in Auckland from one domain of one reference? So no, you wouldn't. I think it might be an issue if you had, you know, all not observed, but actually it's quite normal for people to not have the opportunity to do everything in your TA placements. So that's absolutely fine. And you'll remember when Korero was going through the Fit for Purpose practitioner earlier on, we are looking for really well-rounded individuals, and we're looking at a number of domains. So it's not just references and it's not just your clinical performance. We're also looking for what you're doing outside of work and how you balance work and study and life, because we all have lives outside of work. So no, that won't be an issue. How many applications do Auckland and counties typically receive per year?
Okay, I'm not quite sure about typically, but I think I have the numbers for last year. So I think for Auckland, it was just over 400, 411, I think from memory. And counties had about 397 applications, yeah. So that's, yeah, kind of general numbers, yeah.
Okay, so hopefully we're answering everyone's questions appropriately. Okay, so next question, any thoughts on research opportunities at Middlemore? So this sounds like this might be one for you, Josh.
Yeah, totally. There's a research office in Kuawatia, that place at the back of Middlemore where lots of people have handovers. Lots of really helpful people within that area. If you're specifically looking to start a research project, those people can help you. If you're in the middle of a research project, those people can help you. But both Middlemore and Auckland Hospital are very research heavy centres. So I had no doubts that you'll be able to find help at any of those places if you wanted it, at both Auckland and Middlemore.
No, I mean, Josh said, like Auckland, I think because of Auckland Hospital's affiliation with the university, possibly there's just a little bit more of a kind of direct channel. But I'm not trying to discount Josh or counties because he's almost making me want to move over. Yeah, I honestly, as I said before, like all the SMOs I've met are just super keen to help you out and super keen to help you. So if you have a particular interest or you just need research because you know that you want to become a ENT surgeon, you can approach them early. Just remember that with research, that takes time. So if you have an inkling that you're interested in an area, I would fully recommend getting into that early, even as a TI. Yeah, and either write to them, express your interest, or find people at the hospitals that you're at to kind of put some feelers out is what I would suggest. Heaps of research though, heaps of research and heaps of opportunity, and it's pretty open for everyone to kind of put their hand up. There's way more research than we have people doing it, so yeah.
Okay, we've still got some questions coming through. This is great. So what sort of things would make you get a -1 score for each of the quadrants?
So I've just brought up our table again. So the things that would get you a -1 is no evidence of completion. So that's an incomplete application. So say, for example, if you didn't submit one of your references, then we would put that down as no evidence of completion, or also if it was unacceptable. So say, for example, if in one of your references, somebody's put a not so positive comment in there saying like a little bit of an issue or something like that, then that's something that would obviously raise concerns for us. So you might possibly score a -1 for that. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Melody? Or yeah.
Just actually to add to that, if someone has only submitted 2 references, they won't be sent through to the DHBs in the first place. So that would be quite rare.
Yeah, it is rare just from an Auckland region perspective for people to score a -1. So, and we, like I said earlier, we look at the whole application. So, and it often balances out. So even if you've got a reference from someone who may not be so good, but you've got a really good reference from someone else, we will look at that and balance it out. So in general, we want to employ people. So we, the teams are pretty reasonable markers. So don't get too panicked about it. Just make sure you give us a really good, well-rounded CV and application. Okay, next question. What is the process for applying for leave? Does it differ between the 3 DHBs?
It does.
Yeah, it does. Do you want to talk to that, Josh?
At Middlemore, we have something called employee leave kiosk, which I think there's different ways of applying for leave from different places. It's a little bit finicky sometimes, but it does work. It's hard to gauge whether or not you've had your leave accepted. So unless you get an email specifically saying that your leave was accepted, then you would have to think about it. I think most of the time it's best to chat to the RMO coordinator that you're working with, because then you can sort of guarantee that they can see it, and then you can sort of book it in as well and make negotiations about when you can put it in. yeah, I'd say it's difficult to use the program, but it's easy to click how you want the leave. Following that up is a little bit more difficult.
I guess I just want to add to that, you know, Josh earlier said about applying for leave early. Totally agree with that. I think you've got to remember that they've got, you know, a few hundred people wanting leave all pretty much the same time with varying dates. It's, you know, administratively quite difficult. The way that we were explained at Auckland in terms of who gets leave, especially around times like Christmas, New Year, kind of heavy public holiday times, is that it's first in, first served to a degree. So if you know that you want next, you know, Easter off, apply as soon as you're able to, because it's just this, the further out you do it, the higher your chances of getting that leave, even if there's a bunch of other people that do that. So yeah, that would be my...
Lots of people will get their leave declined as well. If you say, for example, you applied for something next quarter before you started, it might get declined immediately. And sometimes that's just so they can put together a relief roster, because the relief roster dictates when the leave can be allocated. And if you don't have the list of relievers and you can't allocate those spaces, the spaces exist, but until a quarter is about to start, you don't have the relief roster set up. You can't find out whether or not that space is free and who you have to shuffle around. So lots of people will find that they get their leave sort of declined, but when it gets into close to the quarter, things are actually pretty easy to negotiate from that point, because they actually have the information they need to slot and change around places. So I wouldn't worry too much if when you apply for something, it gets declined. If it's really important, go talk to somebody. But that's generally what happens, and it's not changed for a long time.
Cool, thank you both. And that leads nicely on to the next question, which is, if I know they have a family commitment that I need leave for in late January, first month of employment, how soon can I apply for leave? So you won't be able to apply until you get matched to the region. But once, or if you are successful in getting matched to the region, the key thing is just to get in contact, and they will take a note of that. We won't be able to finalise or firm that up until closer to the time, like Josh has spoken about it. But if it's a really important family event, we generally try and accommodate that wherever we can. Okay, a couple more questions. Firstly, hello, thank you for a great presentation. Nice work, team. Do you employ PGY1 Australian graduates prior to the start date in January, or do spots across the DHBs fill up after round one with New Zealand graduates? So we generally don't employ people prior to January. So that's when the ACE intake is for next year. So it'll be January. And we do, as you probably know, if you've seen the ACE presentation, the algorithm prioritizes category ones. So Australian graduates generally come lower down on the priority list, but it doesn't mean they won't be employed. And we will sometimes pick up Australian graduates in the first round of match to Auckland. And then we also go back in our region and generally pick up additional people out of the ACE talent pool. So if you're interested in the region, certainly make sure you rank us, and then you've got every opportunity to be employed. What are your thoughts on going rural versus urban as a house officer for getting onto training programs?
I don't think that there should be a difference between those places. I think they're all different. They both offer opportunities that you can't get somewhere else. Auckland and DHB, for example, are very good places to be doing research and getting in touch with SMOs that are the heads of those services. So actually knowing those people is kind of helpful. But that being said, being out in a rural area means you've got more time to do things like surgery, you've got more time for exposure sometimes. And actually they need help in rural areas. And doing all my placements in rural areas, I got to do so much. The house officers were doing clinics, for example. You also have a lot more time to focus on Part 1 exams if you were going to do that for surgery. I'm not surgically inclined, I have lots of surgical friends. Yeah, both of those things are things that you would want to weigh up for yourself. I don't think anyone can say that one is better than the other.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think there's a perfect way. I think there's a perfect way everyone will be doing it. I think there's a couple of things. A lot of the directors of training of various specialties are up in Auckland. So as Josh said, getting to know them, I think, is really useful. Getting to know what they're looking for is really useful. Because Auckland's so big, you will also get to meet the other people that are kind of in the same pathway as you. I don't know, I'd almost say maybe start in Auckland and then make your way so you learn lots of really good skills and then transfer to a rural hospital maybe. I don't know, maybe that's just my take on it. But as Josh said, I think having more time to do your part ones in a rural centre is probably really useful. And then having a really good base of your kind of medical knowledge, maybe you get to use that more in a rural hospital, knowing that you're kind of, yeah, making the right calls on things. I'm not sure. That probably semi how I'd be leaning, but yeah, I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that one, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd probably be a better balanced debate if we had someone that was in a rural hospital. Yeah, if you're at one, you should just ask some of the registrars there what they think about it.
Yeah, certainly from speaking with some of our vocational training committees, at the point people apply for registrar training, they like to see, again, well-rounded experience. So I think if you have a mix, it's always helpful. And most of the training programs require you to go rurally at some point anyway. Okay, so I think we're getting to the bottom of the questions. So the next one is, what do you want to see in a desirable CV? On the ACE template, there was a table where you record the runs, duration, skills gained, and hours worked per week. As you can imagine, that does take up a lot of space, especially if we try to limit it to 2 pages. So any tips welcome.
The page limits and things like that we have in place are more for things that have free text boxes. So that's, for example, like if you have like your personal statement and things like that, we're not wanting more than, say, half a page or so. Whereas, for example, if you have like 20 or so different runs that you've done, we definitely need to see all of that information there. So I wouldn't be skipping like run information and qualifications and stuff like that information to meet the 2-page limit. Rather, I'd be looking at making sure that you're trying to make like some of your more free text areas more succinct, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say follow the ACE template for your CV as it's written, and we're pretty good at looking through those fairly quickly because it's a standardized template, so that's really good. And then I think what we were referring to earlier around the limits on page, or trying to keep it short and succinct, was more the cover letter. So the cover letter is optional, but if you're going to do one, it doesn't need to be a novel. Just get your message across clearly and succinctly. Do we need to apply for all 3 DHBs separately, or do we choose Auckland as a region for our application?
So I think the ACE application, there's not the option to choose Auckland as a region. So because I know that you have to rank the DHBs in order of preference. So I guess just based on that, if you do prefer, like if you do have the 3 DHBs in the Auckland region as, say, your top 6 preferences, then yeah, you would need to rank them in order of that, for example. So yeah, you will have to rank all of them if you were wanting to come to any of the 3 in the Auckland region.
Yeah, so Melody's right. So just to clarify, in the ACE application, the DHBs are each considered separately, and if you get matched to one of our Auckland DHBs, you'll likely work there for the duration of your first year. The advantage then is that in your second year, you have the opportunity to rotate around all 3 and in your subsequent years. But in your first year in your ACE application, you do need to rank the DHBs individually. So that gives you the opportunity to rank all 3, or just to rank 1, or just a 2, or whatever.
Serena, with the cover letters, if they choose to rank all 3, which probably a majority of them will, are they able to upload one cover letter if they wish, just into one of the 3 DHBs in Auckland, and will that certainly be reviewed by the PVTC committee as one cover letter but applying to all 3 DHBs?
Yeah, so that certainly is an option. So although the ACE process, because it's a national process, you're having to rank individual DHBs, in the Auckland region, because we have the Northern Regional Alliance and we work regionally, we do our ranking on a regional basis. So if you apply to one DHB or to all 3, you will just get ranked once. So if you do just want to do one cover letter and upload it once, that'll be considered as part of your application. If you have, on the flip side, if you have specific things you want to say about Middlemore, specific things you want to say about Waitemata or Auckland, then you're welcome to do 3 separate ones. Okay, next question. Is it a good idea to add some colour and be creative with the CV layout?
Well, for us, I mean, because we have so many applications, I think it's best to just stick with the layout which you have currently. This is just to make sure that, you know, we're able to pick up on the information that we need and that we don't miss out on anything if it's like in a different layout. So sadly, yeah, it's best to just stick with the layout in our template that we have.
You can definitely be more creative in like your cover letters, your personal statements and those sorts of things there. That's where you can stand out, be a little bit different. But yeah, in terms of layout, it's best to be as consistent as possible.
Follow up to my previous question regarding CV. The actual template itself is 3 to 4 pages long. So to clarify, you'd like to see that skills and qualifications space populated well and largely doesn't matter if it's 3 pages long but succinct. Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think I'd just work your way through the template, make sure you fill in as much information as you can, and it doesn't matter if it's 3 pages. I think when we were talking about limits, it was more around the cover letter.
I think Middlemore is a great place to work. I've made a lot of friends here. I really do love my job, and at the end of the day, here I am talking about it. I say it's busy, but I'm still here talking about how great the job is. And I really hope that some of you choose to come here because it's a great experience. The food's great, the RMO unit's good. And I'm here next year, so.
So I'm moving to counties on the count of that. No, I guess, I don't know, maybe it's very obvious, but at the time when I was writing my application, it didn't seem that obvious to a lot of people. It was actually, I would just recommend that you work backwards from that quadrant to kind of look what they're looking for. At the end of the day, they're looking for keywords. They've got hundreds of CVs to read through. If you can make their job easy and just kind of go, this is what you're looking for, this is how I, without lying, match that, it just probably makes their job easier and just helps you get the scores that you need. But my recommendation probably to keep it simple in terms of, I don't know where to start, how to write my cover letter. I don't know what you want to hear from me from a personal statement that's only 3 paragraphs long. That would be my kind of tip to kind of writing your stuff, I think. Yeah.
Yep, you guys can find a copy of that in our selection and allocations policy on our Auckland Doctors website if you did want to refer to that. It just has a breakdown of some of the things we're looking for. So say, for example, under professionalism or team approach, we're giving you guys some keywords of types of things that we're looking for in your CV. And again, if you have anything at extracurricular or anything like that, definitely let us know about it. We want to know who you guys are as people.
We've had one more question. Quentin, do we have time to quickly do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So would you recommend spending PGY2 in Middlemore rather than your PGY1 in Middlemore? Because rumours are it's very stressful. This might be a Josh one.
I would say that if you're selective about the run orders that you pick and the teams that you're working with, some people have a really good time. Some of the runs are difficult. I'm not going to lie there. Some of the runs are stressful, but I think that learning curve is for everybody. Everyone when they start is going to be stressed. I think Naomi could probably attest to that as well. When you start, everything is hard, and at some point it just becomes easier, and that happens. Yeah, it happens at some point, and I won't lie when I say that there's moments where I was stressed, but I feel like every house officer is going to have moments where they're stressed, no matter where they are. I, at the end of the day, will say that I haven't had a mental breakdown. I've had leave. I've requested 1 week for every quarter, and I think that's really good way to balance your life. Having RDOs is a way to prevent stress and burnout, and I find those to be really beneficial for me. And actually being around people that you love to be around and being around staff that make you feel welcome every day, that's not stressful. The stressful part of the job is when you're surrounded by people that you don't want to be around. And I can say with 100% certainty and love that I love working with the people that are here and the patients that are here. So I will disagree with the stressful part. I think that is a part of the house office experience no matter where you go.
Yeah, I mean, I probably agree, and there'll be, it's very run dependent, and it also really depends on what your strengths are. And I guess stress is just part of actually that comes with the job. It comes with the job whether you're a nurse or an HCA or a doctor. I don't know if that's specific to our roles. That's probably also when you do your most learning, is when you're kind of pushed to the edges of what you know and what you're comfortable with. And as Josh said, when you first start, and that's why we're both like, work really hard as a TI, because when you first start, it is stressful. You kind of suddenly gone from someone will double check everything I do to I'm making calls and this could end up, so I think there's always a nature of stress. I think back yourself in terms of surround yourself with good people, use your nurses really well, they know a lot. And the stressful part is around, it's probably also when you learn the most, to be honest. I wouldn't shy away from a bit of stress, would be my take. And actually one of the reasons I picked Auckland is because when I was picking hospitals to apply at, the rumour was that Auckland's, pretty anal and they've got really high expectations and things like that. And part of me actually picked Auckland based on that, because I wanted to go, if I can do that at Auckland, I know I'll be okay at other hospitals. There's different rooms, different years. I think, Middlemore does get a rap for being really busy, but it also has the reputation of being incredibly friendly, patient-wise and staff-wise. I've had a great time at Auckland. I can't say anything bad about it. I've had a really good time, but I think stress will be at Waitak, it'll be at Rotorua, it's going to be everywhere. It's just part of the job, unfortunately.
Oh, kia ora Josh and kei te pai Naomi, kia ora mō te korero. Thank you for your honesty, transparency and for your insight into working with Auckland and county specifically, and the TIs can translate a lot of that to Waitemata as well. Kei te pai, tēnā pai te mahi to Coral and Melody, and to our beautiful Tarina who's on the side as well. We can't see her. She's our portfolio manager for recruitment and allocations here in the Auckland region. We really value your insight and input today's webinar. So no more questions. I think that's about it. It's been a fantastic webinar. We've had a lot of questions, the most that we've had all series so far, and they've been really good questions from the TIs who have been watching online. So I hope you have a very good evening. Thank you very much for coming along, and haere rā.
Thank you.
Thank you.